did get diagnosed with the big C when I was quite young. So I think observing that and observing, the fragileness and the importance that health, we have to have on health definitely inspired me to just learn so much about that. I wasn't given all those years of experience to do with PT, to do with nutrition for nothing. Like I can't, not use them now for this thing.
I am here with James and Dimitri for another episode of Project Peak Performance. Really looking forward to getting stuck into this one with you, Dimitri. James, I'm going to come and just check how you are first of all.
Yeah, I'm very well. I'm very much looking forward to this one with Dimitri. We've got lots to delve into.
So, Dimitri, we're going to cover your story first of all, and why you've got to this performance coaching aspect of your life. And I just want to say, one of the first things I noticed when I met you face to face was the fact that you've got skin like an Instagram filter. It was the first thing I noticed. I was like, wow, this guy's got good skin. So talk to me about how you've got such good skin, and also how you've got to the point of really diving into performance coaching.
That's bloody hilarious. And
what an intro.
We'll get into the story in a minute. I guess overcoming an incurable disease apparently of health last year has probably got something to do with it. That's quite the oxymoron there, if you will. But we'll get into it. Yeah, appreciate it. So, I mean, I actually just started out, with a very kind of open North Star of where I was kind of going. I was just going with the flow initially when I got into the industry and just learning, etc. And then the industry was personal training. That's how I first qualified back in 2016 as a PT. A couple years before that, it was kind of brewing, like, do I stay with the job, or do I then do my own business and qualify? So the interest in health was brewing. That probably came from, I think, unfortunately, seeing my parents be diagnosed with the big C, but they did get into remission, which is good. But they did get diagnosed with the big C when I was quite young. So I think observing that and observing, the fragileness and the importance that health, we have to have on health definitely inspired me to just learn so much about that. So then I started off an agency, eventually moved to PT in 2016, as I mentioned, and I did that. I worked for myself as a PT for about 5 years, and then 2020 threw a spanner in the works on that side of things.
COVID,
and then exactly. Yeah, COVID threw a spanner into the works on that side of things. So I had to learn a lot more about the business, because being a PT in a gym, everyone that is there, has some level of interest in their health. That's why they're there. So learning the business aspect of things and learning how to perform and execute even more on the business side of things was important as things moved to, remote, and you had limitations there. And then I actually, COVID, for some reason, had some sort of confusion in the immune system with a couple back-to-back infections of COVID within 90 days. And, they battered my immune system in a way that maybe there may have been a genetic like weakness or something there. There may be been some sort of genetic weakness. And then that triggered an autoimmune condition. For those who probably heard of that and don't know what that is, an autoimmune condition is where your immune system treats a certain part of your body as if it's not actually your body, as if it's like an infection or as if it's like an allergy. So it like wants to basically eliminate that part of, that can be like your joints. It can attack your joints. For example, for people who have like rheumatoid arthritis, it can think that your joints, need to be are foreign. For me, it was the GI system. So that's the autoimmune condition was called Crohn's disease, and that was that was in 2022. And that was an absolute battering when it came to, mental well-being, when it came to, trying to maintain the business side of things, etc. And like a battering when it came to energy levels and just mentally just being there to try and maintain business and perform. But the story I told myself was I wasn't given all those years of experience to do with PT, to do with nutrition for nothing. Like I can't, not use them now for this thing. So Mount Everest, here we go, baby. And just for like 9-12 months, for the best part of a year, like every single day, I was just doing my PhD in energy, in performance, in getting my health back. Because I was like, mate, life, I'm 28. Like, this is not fair for this thing to take me out. So yeah, I just learned as much as I could for 9 to 12 months when it came to nutrition, when it came to the gut microbiome, when it came to energy levels, because I was in when I was really sick with it, I'd lost about 20 kilos. I'd lost about 20 kilos, 44 pounds. Yeah, really quickly. In May, the weight was flying off, because when you have Crohn's, and it's flaring up, you can't eat, right? Like, if it's not working, you just can't eat.
Quick question, sorry, Dimitri. So Crohn's, for those of us that aren't completely au fait, what does that affect?
Autoimmune condition, immune system attacks a certain part of the body. Crohn's is the gut, right?
Okay.
And it's the part of the gut, like the small intestine, which is like, the top part, like people think your stomach and stuff like that, and all that size of things. The part of your gut that has to digest food, that then gets inflamed and doesn't work if you are someone who is suffering with that condition.
It's a powerful story, isn't it, James? I think, and I just think back to kind of starting businesses and family life and stuff like that, where so many people sit, that actually that having that on as a negative influence as well would have been so difficult. But what you've managed to do with that story is you then turned it full circle into helping other people that maybe don't have the Crohn's disease, but want the things that you desired from having the Crohn's disease that were taken away from you, which is energy and your performance and your physique and your diet and nutrition and the gut health element of things. And I think that's where you've managed to flip it round and now coach people and how they can get that back, because I feel people go backwards often in life in terms of that aspect of it. Energy, creativity, flair. We see our kids running around, don't we, James? And it's like, wow, I could do with a dose of that energy. And people say it all the time, but that's what you're trying to bring to people in reality.
100%. And the things that were going through my mind that really wanted me to recover and smash it was because, I wanted to be able to provide for my other half. And, as a guy, my belief system, I just didn't want to be, down and unwell in that way. And the situation is then being able to then take that, maintain the business, and get to where I'm at now means that I basically learned so much when it came to, how to be as efficient and impactful as possible with my time on, what really matters, how to lock in, any mental performance and brain power that I had to be able to do the things that matter the most, and how to master nutrition so you feel well, so you're energetic, and so you can be impactful as possible and minimize distractibility, irritation, stress response, etc. Those things that can, hinder performance. So I'm sure we'll be able to dive into that.
Well, we're only a few minutes in, and already I'm absolutely fascinated, and I've got dozens of questions. So I'm going to try and keep it so that it's one at a time, Dimitri, so don't overload. So we're talking a year or so ago that you were diagnosed with Crohn's, this really debilitating illness. And
just to FYI that you are told, like the consultants and everyone will tell you that it's like an incurable, lifelong situation. And so I'm very, happy to not be on any medication whatsoever and not have any symptoms of it whatsoever. And I just live normally. I have to do things that earn me that reward, which is good nutrition and just looking after myself now. But that's it.
Well, that was kind of where I was heading, because you said something. It was a very short sentence, and I immediately went, "This guy has got such a strong mindset." And it was Mount Everest, baby. For you, it wasn't a case of shit, this is it. For you, it was a case of, this isn't going to beat me. I've just got to work out how I'm going to overcome it. So there's a huge piece of mindset in there. That's clearly inherent in you as a character. But what then was the trigger moment? Because there must have been a period where you were diagnosed and you went, what do I do?
Yeah, exactly. I think what was really helpful was finding evidence of people who have done the thing that I wanted to do. Yeah, finding evidence like do people exist who have done the thing, right? And there was a handful. I was like, I think there was like 3 or 4 people that I found, and I was like, well, if 3 or 4 people can do it, then I can do it as well, because they were living just normally or whatever beforehand as well. And I actually spoke to one guy who was one of the first to do it, and he actually didn't have anyone to look to when he did it. So I was like, if someone can do it not having any evidence, and he's been living well for like 40 years since, I was like, you know what? Let's do it.
And so fast forward from the diagnosis to today, you've taken what you've learned, as Ian has said, like you say, you've pretty much got yourself a PhD in all things gut health and brain performance, etc. So where are you at today then? You're obviously coaching people on this, and you've just literally shared with us that you're living free of medication. What is it then that's the compromise? Probably the wrong choice of words, but what is it that you're having to do so that you don't have to medicate?
Chosen suffering instead of unchosen suffering.
Okay.
Meaning I choose my suffering in the form of hard workouts. I say suffering just as a direct comparison of the two. I choose my workouts regardless of how I feel. I choose my nutrition and walk past certain things in certain aisles in the supermarkets if it's not the day that I'm supposed to be having those things. Like, midweek or on the weekend, I'll still have some treats and stuff like that. Like, I choose the discipline and, as I said, chosen suffering instead of unchosen suffering, which is the repercussions of not doing those things in the moment, is what I believe.
Brilliant. I love that. So going back, success leaves clues. You looked at it and you went, right, there are people that have managed to find a way, found a blueprint for their body, for their DNA that's got them to the win, which is to remove the illness from their body. And a lot of people would look at that a different way and go, oh God, there's only 2 or 3 people. I couldn't be one of those. But you actually went, well, if there's 2 or 3 people, great. And if there was one guy that had no one to lean on, well, then you almost made it easier in your head, and more achievable, which I think is powerful in any line of goal setting, for anyone in life, whether it's fitness, health, business, or performance, because sometimes it can be overwhelming to have such a big Mount Everest to climb, but rationalizing it in the way that you did there it's quite powerful, actually. I think that's really cool. Getting into the sort of meat and bones, and it may be that it is meat and bones, but getting into the dietary side of it, because I find a lot of people when they get married and a lot of people when they have kids, I'm meeting people now that I haven't seen before COVID, and I look at some of them and I go, what the fuck happened to you?
Mm-hmm.
Like, guilty.
Not maybe not, but way beyond, way beyond. And I just think, wow, you've aged 10 years in the 4 years that I've not seen you. And it's not natural aging. It's the stuff that we put in our body. It must be. And we were talking off camera, and I said to James, one of the things that baffled me in July was that I ran more miles than I'd ever run in my life and worked out longer than I'd ever worked in my life. And I put on 2 kilos of fat, and it has to come down to the kitchen. It has to come down to the cooking, nutrition. So give us some basic principles on that, Dimitri, because I know it's a big part of your lifestyle now. Give us some do's and don'ts, some quick fire do's and don'ts for us on that.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that's such a good question. I think a lot of us can relate to that situation of me, seeing people after a few years, etc. That makes sense. And the reason I think this is so important for business owners, and what lights me up about this, is because for me, successful business ownership to me equals choice, equals independence, equals freedom, equals, healthy competition in the marketplace. It's better for the world if there's healthy competition in the marketplace and innovation, etc. Nutrition, I think, is a key cornerstone to, the player that is looking to create said things in the world. And so when it comes to the key ingredients that fall under nutrition that are going to allow you to, for me, the top things I look for is having consistent and strong energy levels. That's a big one, right? Having longevity. So the game that you want to play, you can play it as long as possible, as well as possible. So the big things that I look out for in nutrition is prioritizing muscle health, right? That's such a big driver of longevity when it comes to your metabolism, when it comes to, especially if you've worked hard in your younger years, like, you still want to continue to look and feel good for as long as possible. And the way you would do that would be by getting in adequate protein levels is number one. That's number one on the list. And what does adequate mean? Well, the government recommendations are probably going to be like whatever your weight is in kilograms, about 1 gram per kilogram or less, which looks like about 60 odd grams of protein a day as an RDA, recommended daily amount. So if that amount blows my mind at how terrible that recommendation is, because that number is just a number to avoid disease, like to avoid deficiency in disease, like just over the limit to avoid deficiency in disease. And if number one, when it comes to fueling said business owner for the best you can be and prioritizing muscle health is protein, we're kind of looking to double that. We're looking to double that recommendation. So whatever your ideal weight is, you would then double that ideal weight of kilograms. So if your ideal weight is 70 kilograms, you would double that ideal weight, which is 140. And that's the kind of rough recommendation, assuming there's no other, ailments or issues that we need to consider. That would be the recommendation to kind of look for to prioritize muscle health and metabolism.
So for someone who's target weight, then they're not their existing weight, but target weight to reach 70, you would suggest that they have 140 grams of protein a day. And that's
number one on the list.
Good muscle health. Energy is clearly something that features quite high. What would your number one tip be there?
The protein levels will do that, that's why I pick these as almost what I call meta habits, meaning habits that have benefits in multiple areas and make multiple areas a lot easier, right? Number two on the list would be the control of blood sugar levels through nutrition as well. So controlled blood sugar levels. What does that look like? Many people are probably familiar with the afternoon dip of energy, the afternoon lull, right? Just feeling like everything's a little bit slower or harder work, etc. after lunch. That's when that can happen for a lot of people. Number one, protein. Number two, blood sugar. If you do that thing for protein, what usually happens is your blood sugar levels will be a lot more balanced by doing number one. And then what you can also do is just be mindful of carbohydrate intake, meaning like the white and yellow foods, like whites and yellows, rices, pastas, breads, bananas, etc. And the way that you would be mindful of that is just consider if carbohydrates are a fuel source, if you will, is there a tremendous requirement for fuel at the moment due to high levels of activity, high levels of performance, lots of, running, weightlifting, hobbies, etc. Or at the moment, are you just focused on crushing your business? You're putting in 12 hours a day plus, you're not really, movement wise, you're just doing the basics. Then we would look to just be a little bit more balanced and contained with that intake so you don't get those dips of energy and fluctuations, which is not helpful.
So you got protein as the foundation, checking in and making sure you're not overdoing unnecessary carbohydrates based on lifestyle, which will naturally also stop the blood sugar dips, which caused the crash and the spike and the ups and downs. I remember seeing the graphic of what happens after you drink a can of Coke. Never drunk a can of Coke since, because it's just horrifying to see what happens over that 12-hour window of drinking a can of Coke. So that's great on the nutrition kind of basic level. What about the don'ts? What are the big kind of, don'ts? If you were to advise someone not to put that in your body, what would that be?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. So the don'ts, like one of the biggest and one of the easiest that you can look out for is looking to avoid and minimize as much as possible something called vegetable or seed oils, right? So if you look on the back of packets when you buy food that is packaged together and done for you, right, you're not really going to see this in single ingredient stuff. You will see things like grapeseed oil, rapeseed oil, sunflower seed oil, soybean oil. Why should you avoid these? I had a fat lipid expert. Lipids is another word for fats. A lipid expert, global expert on my own podcast for a conversation not too long ago, and we went through it. And essentially what it is these oils, they use deodorizers, they use solvents, they use bleach, right? They process them so heavily in a factory where the oils are basically, they look like oil, but they're so destroyed inside that when that then makes its way into your cardiovascular system, the inflammation is terrible for your cardiovascular system. And for guys, business is stressful enough on the cardiovascular system, right? Or stress is stressful enough on the cardiovascular system. If you then add things like that, like when it comes to playing the game for as long as you can and as well as you can, I would avoid that at all costs if you can, to play the game as long as you can.
Interesting. I wasn't expecting that answer. Because at surface level, most, I suppose, articles you read or press releases that get shared talk about sugar and sugar intake.
That's next. That's number two.
But it's the fact that the oil superseded it in your view. That for me is in itself mind-blowing.
Yeah. I've done experiments with it, myself, with eating stuff that contains that daily. And I felt the effects of inflammation, of joint pain, of low energy. Like, it would literally cause us high levels of inflammation. And it's not just me. The evidence clearly shows that of industrial seed oils, which is what is used due to cost reasons in said products that you buy in supermarkets, etc.
It's so difficult. It's so difficult for people out there because the narrative in marketing these days is so strong, and without naming the product, but it starts with a H and ends with an L, and you can get a t-shirt when you order a pack of them. It's meant to be like a really healthy, nutritious product. And I ordered 2 cases of it. So I had 24 bottles arrive. And what I realized is I felt horrible, like really horrible. And then I spoke to a couple of other people who also had felt horrible, either coming off it or going on to having it as a meal replacement. And someone popped in the office the other day, and I actually thought, oh, now I've got a bit more knowledge around it, I'm going to look at the bottle, and it was filled with those types of things, which makes a lot of sense. You probably know the product I'm talking about without mentioning it, but have you had any sort of experiences with that?
That was the thing that caused the joint pain in my entire body when I was experimenting with it. Actually, that was, fingers, wrists, elbow, like whole body was inflamed as a result of that experiment. I stopped the experiment. I then was like, oh, maybe it was a coincidence, because I locked in my diet. Everything else was the same, locked in. Took it up again after another 2 weeks. And then it came back again, the whole body inflammation and pain. I'm very receptive to like caffeine. Like, I feel those effects quickly, so it'd be different for other people. But coupled with the research and the effects, it was a no-brainer for me. So it would then be to just look at products that don't have that in. Use maybe coconut fat, for example, or olive oil. Instead.
The reason why I'm more shocked than I suppose I ordinarily would be is I was having a conversation with a chap. I'm in a building where there's other businesses, and I was having a chat with a business owner next door to me, probably no more than a week ago, who's been working with a personal trainer for the last, 4-6 weeks, and they're really dialing up their training with him, and he started giving them a nutritional advice and meal plans and everything else. And that particular personal trainer has advised them to introduce that particular product into their day-to-day as part of a meal replacement when they're super busy. So it's very interesting about how much conflicting advice there is. But actually, just in a very short segment there, you've gone that layer deeper that dispels the fact that what he's suggesting is right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that personal trainer is probably, I think they are doing a great job. I think it's just what lens you're looking at things. And as I said, if you're looking to do the thing as long as possible, as healthy and energetic as possible, I would send it all the way and focus on that from the beginning.
So I think you mentioned meta habits, and that was something that was really important for you and really important for your clients as well. So habits in life sometimes can be quite hard because life is erratic and life comes at you at all sorts of different ways, like with COVID and like what happened with your parents and then your own personal stuff. And everyone's got their own version of that and how life hits them in the face with a cricket bat sometimes. So what are those kind of meta habits from the moment you wake up that you think are really important for people in this day and age?
Yes, exactly. Because it's those meta habits from the moment you wake up, which is also just going to make everything else easier for your energy levels for business. So they will have this effect as well. And it is so worth it. The key with meta habits or any habits you want to implement is the busier you are, the more humble you have to be as to how much time you think you can allocate to it. So don't fall for the honeymoon phase of, right, it's going down tomorrow, right? Let me just fully send it. I've seen time and time again, it's worth starting small with these meta habits. So for example, one of those things, as soon as I wake up, within the first 45 to 60 minutes of waking up entirely, is getting natural light outside. That sounds super basic, but it does have some strong functions in the body, because our eyes are like light sensors, meaning you will receive that strong light from outside and your body will be like, oh, okay. And then we'll process things in your body, such as increase in dopamine. If you've heard of dopamine, you know what it's like to feel excited and motivated to pursue something and achieve it. Dopamine is responsible for that. So it makes sense to do something that creates more of that feeling in your body and your mind for business reasons, and will increase your energy massively. The rule for that is overcast day, because we're in the UK, this is not Costa Rica. So overcast day, 15 to 20 minutes is good. And sunny day, 5 to 10 minutes outside. That's not with sunglasses and that's not through a window, because it will reduce that effect by about 1,000x. So it would be actually outside. Many people have dogs, that they would walk in the morning. So cool, you can do that. Otherwise, there's plenty of ways to figure out, a school walk, outdoor time in the garden, just getting up 10 minutes earlier, like somehow would really recommend that. The other thing for me that I find really useful, and this is a bit more of a niche one, but cold showers are a big one for me. It's a bit more of a niche one. If you've tried it, though, you'll know why this is so effective. Again, increasing dopamine and norepinephrine, which is a bit more of an excitability hormone, increasing those in the body. For me, it's a no-brainer to create more of those stronger, motivational, energetic feelings in the morning. And you can start as little as 15 seconds. I did that 3 years ago, and I've carried on ever since. And now I'm at like a minute and a half. I never look forward to it. It always sucks. I've never looked forward to it once, like never. But after, it's just worth it every single time. So a bit more of a niche one. Would highly recommend it, though.
Are you a cold shower man still, Dimitri, or have you, invested in one of these products that you can dip yourself in that I know Ian and a couple of the other guys on the podcast have got?
Yeah. I know there's the plungers and that side of things. For me, the cold shower does like 70-80% of the heavy lifting for me. But there will be a time where I'll want to take it that step further and probably invest a bit more. But this kind of does most of the heavy lifting of the effects for me. And then in terms of after that, some form of mindfulness can be really useful, right? Not for any sort of reasons such as a spiritual practice or anything like that, just as a mental, like brain benefiting practice. And mindfulness, or interchangeably used with meditation, nerves that fire together, wire together. Meaning, if the nerves and your brain's pathways in the morning, soon after waking up, have fired together in a chaotic, worrisome, stressful, or reactive way when it comes to maybe phone or anything like that. Nerves that fire together, wire together, meaning it's much more likely you will re-enter that state with greater ease later on in the day due to the signature of that emotional response already being signed and created from the morning. It's much more likely that signature can repeat with greater ease later in the day. Therefore, a mindfulness practice that is amazing for your brain, creativity, and balancing your nervous system means that instead that signature has been created emotionally and physiologically in the morning, meaning you have an increased likelihood of replicating that response later on in the day as well.
I love that. That makes a lot of sense. It does make a lot of sense. And I think in this day and age, it's very easy to get woken up, or, you know, something wakes you up. For me, it's a 2-year-old, and you're not quite ready to wake up. So the easiest way to bring yourself into life is to grab your phone, see what Chelsea are doing in the transfer market, and then you know, then we move on from there in my house. But yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It really does. One of the things that I wanted to talk about, because you spoke about protein, you've spoken about sugar, some morning habits there, which are awesome tips. You know, natural sunlight just makes sense. Cold shower, to just, you know, people say get a cold shower in the morning. It's just an age-old thing that goes back, isn't it? It's like that wake up kind of moment, and trying to stay away from instant stress or anxiety, you know, be it emails and WhatsApps and things like that are going to put you straight away into a state of pressure. Staying away from that makes total sense. Right. So I know a lot of people, and I don't know the statistic on it. I know it's higher in America, but we would say there's an overwhelming caffeine addiction in society in this day and age.
Oh, yes.
So where does that fall into performance and nutrition and health and mindset and your life as well? What would be the advice and the guidelines around caffeine?
Yeah. Like caffeine can actually, you know, it can be helpful. There is some benefits to, like, you know, liver health, etc., from coffee and that sort of thing, if it works for you. So that's good. The key is to have it, use it as a tool rather than you know, with anything, there is a threshold that if passed with caffeine consumption, the negatives can start to outweigh the positives. Meaning, I gave this example a little while ago, and I like it in terms of if we are to be athletes of business, meaning we are looking to go for gold and you know, succeed in the way an athlete does at the Olympics, and we're looking to get our own gold in whatever it is, however you define that. One of the big things for athletes is you know, recovery, right? And that includes quality sleep. So when it comes to caffeine intake, the long and short of it is, I've worked with many business owners that will get the coffee on as soon as they're up. What happens is, within the first hour or so of waking up, there's almost no point in getting in the caffeine, because the system that utilizes caffeine is not functioning anywhere near the system that utilizes those adrenal hormones. The adrenal ones are the ones I mentioned from the cold showers, right? Like those dopamines and norepinephrines. Another way to then use that system to your advantage is instead to consume, instead of that first hour coffee, caffeine would be some salted water using like a Himalayan or a Celtic sea salt. That would look like 1/8 to 1/4 of a teaspoon, which would take it to about a 5 out of 10 saltiness in a 250 ml glass of water. What that will do is, the system that's actually working first is your adrenal system for that first hour. That's the system that actually is working first to bring your alertness up for the morning, to bring your energy up for the morning, to wake you up. That is on first. So therefore, consume the thing that's going to work with that system first. It makes sense. If you have the caffeine too early, you'll crash sooner. Yeah, that's the main thing, really, is you'll just crash sooner in the day. That's the main drawback. You will just, your energy will fade sooner compared to if you have it 60 to 90 minutes after waking up by doing the other thing first.
So you feel like you need it, but it's going to hinder you in the long term. So sort of having caffeine too set, because a lot of people wake up and they're like, their eyes are like this, and they're kind of searching for the kettle or the caffeine or whatever, and it's maybe they're searching for natural light by the sounds of it.
Well, it's the adrenal hormones. It's the adrenal hormones that are responsible for getting you fired up and ready. So actually, to most people, it's not their fault, but to their knowledge, they think caffeine is the tool to use, but it's actually the wrong tool at that time of the day.
Counterproductive. I smiled when you mentioned it within the first hour, because a little bit like Ian, having an 18-month-old and a 3-year-old that both insist on getting up in the middle of the night. I've had a tendency over the last few months to hit the button on the coffee machine as soon as I'm downstairs. So yeah, lesson learned. Appreciate that. Thanks, Dimitri.
Yeah, give it a try. Let me know how you get on.
And
Absolutely.
what about on the flip side? Because you mentioned about athletes, and a big part of athletes is recovery and sleep.
Yeah.
So what's the rules around caffeine and making sure you settle down? Because I think we've all in life had that moment where your brain can't switch off, and you can't get to sleep and you want to get to sleep. But what's the caffeine rules around that? Because it must have an impact, just biologically on the body, I would have thought.
Absolutely, yeah. It's so important to get that right. As trite and repetitive as it is when it comes to sleep, the effects are so powerful for blood sugar, which is the things I mentioned earlier. Blood sugar the next day, how much you're going to be craving maybe those biscuits at the office or work the next day as a result of sleep quality, because it does affect blood sugar and those cravings, and your ability to be creative. And you're just people know you're a different person if you are underslept or perfectly rested. Like most people can relate, you feel like a different beast if those things are in contrast, right? So with the caffeine, 5 to 6 hours is the half-life of caffeine, meaning if you double that, you're looking at 10 to 12 hours for the caffeine that you ingested to be out of your system, which is why most people talk about lunchtime, stopping your caffeine intake, because if you have not got caffeine out the system, the capacity for you to access the highest level of quality, what's called deep REM sleep, rapid eye movement, like dream state, deep sleep, like the actual sleep that does the things you want it to do to repair the body, your ability to access that of 100%, is reduced if that's still stimulating you, even if you don't think it is, because you're used to it. So that would be like 12 o'clock lunchtime for like a 10 p.m. bedtime would be the caffeine intake. There's other things that you would do leading up to bed that can help, but that's the kind of 10-hour rule.
And so for those, as Ian said, it is an addiction really, isn't it? For a lot of people, caffeine is their go-to to feel like they're almost feeling alive. So what would you replace that with? Is there a myth around green tea, or would you support that green tea is a good replacement?
Yeah, the good thing about green tea as well is it has something called theanine in it as well. So basically, you get the caffeine hit without the jitters, like without the same kind of adrenaline-y type feeling. Like you still feel great, but you don't get the jitters as well. I'm in a place now where I need 0 caffeine, and I will just maybe have caffeine like maybe once a week, like I had a green tea today, but I don't need it at all for energy levels. It's just a nice to have. The reasons for that is due to prioritizing the sleep. So when you asked what else is there, locking in sleep is your biggest tool. Like you can smash 200 quid's worth of supplements a month but if your sleep isn't locked in, like treating it like a proper exercise as best you can, even if you have kids, doing the best you can, that's going to be number one. And then so number two,
a sleep pod in the office to get a couple of hours in where we've got the deficit.
Well, I have clients who if we have time, we'll go into an exercise you can do for 15-20 minutes that does what sleep does for a longer amount of time, but in 15-20 minutes it's like a type of meditation. The other thing you can do is 100% dark chocolate, like cacao, or as close to 100% as you can. That has a really positive effects for increasing energy levels in a natural way, and creating more of those feel-good hormones in your brain. So you just feel like you're enjoying what you're doing more when it comes to work, and it does give you some natural stimulation. So it's close to 100% cacao, just because of the sugar. I'm not telling people to go buy dairy milks and Mars bars for a pick-me-up. So that just make sure you don't cut that bit out. And they're like, chocolate, yes.
Loads of it.
My wife is on point when it comes to chocolate, let me tell you.
I bet that's it. And so if you can do those two things, and then if you can couple looking at your carbohydrate intake and balancing that with good protein intake at lunch, your energy is going to be solid, it's going to be higher, it's going to be more stable. And if you're able to get your exercise in there, sleep and exercise will do more for your energy levels than any supplement ever could. So especially weight training.
So I think on this episode, what we've managed to do is highlight the problems in the day-to-day circle of life for 2023 or for modern day age, because we've basically said, don't wake up in the morning and go plowing into caffeine and sugar, which typically people go, I'm going to wake up, I'm going to have a couple of slices of toast or a bagel or some cereal and a cup of coffee or a tea or whatever it may be, which has a negative impact because you're going to crash on your caffeine and crash on your sugar later. So do go and get some natural light, bring some salts to the party as well. And if you can hit the cold shower, then you're having that perfect kind of morning routine in reality, and then have the caffeine later. Get protein in first because it's going to give you the foundation you need not to have that afternoon slump and crash. And what happens in modern day society is we go down, we get the meal deal, the crisps, the sandwiches, the fizzy drink, because we need that little pick me up at lunchtime. And then we absolutely nosedive afterwards because it was not the right foundational stuff. It was mixed ingredients, not sole ingredients, and it wasn't strong enough on protein to curb the hunger. And because of that, we then crave a bit of energy in the afternoon. So we have a cup of coffee or we have an energy drink or whatever. And that means we can't get to sleep, which means we wake up tired, which means we can repeat the cycle. And everyone's ruined.
So, I have got a question. So Ian alluded to it in there, and we've not moved on to it. And we're definitely not going to be leaving this podcast without doing the exercise that you suggested to get that sleep in. So, I've written that down and circled it and exclamationed it, because I'm sure all the listeners, including myself, will want to adopt that. Your take on the way in which people should take their food on board, i.e., is there a preferred method in your view to improve energy levels, to improve sustained vitality? Intermittent fasting being one that gets talked about a lot. What's your take?
Yeah, so in the way that in which you would take on nutrition for energy levels, is that right?
I suppose for almost a holistic, for vitality, for energy, for better performance.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. So when it comes to energy and vitality and better performance, it's the things that are going to, one, look after your brain and cardiovascular system as much as possible, because you will be feeling significantly stronger in that side of things. And then also the blood sugar aspect. So therefore, a couple palms of protein. Everyone has different palms because different requirements. Obviously, if you're bigger, you'll need more of it. So a couple palms of protein is a good way to aim for at your meals. So that could be, choose the protein source that you like, whether it's fish-based, meat-based, tofu as well, although animal protein sources for the human health are more absorbable and bioavailable, right? They're just easier for your gut. So a couple palms of protein, a couple fists of veggies. So if it's morning, it might be, kind of more spinachy, asparagus, kind of, peppers, mushrooms based, etc. If you're doing some sort of egg situation. And then balancing the carbohydrates as to one flat palm of carbohydrates. So that could be like a bagel thin, or it could be like a bagel thin, or some pasta, for example, whole grain pasta, which is going to have more of the fiber in it. If you do that and you have the protein intake, that's going to balance your blood sugar levels. The veggies are going to do lots of good stuff for various systems in your body, ranging from brain, cardiovascular system, gut, etc. And the balanced carbs mean you're going to avoid that crash we spoke about earlier. Use those kind of palm hand ratios, and that's a good way to start. And just, there's always more you can do in health. I just invite you to know that this is a process. Give yourself compassion. Start with the things that you can do in your life at the moment, and just trust that you can improve it over time, like you have done other things in your life. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. Just start somewhere. And my personal recommendation would be to start in the morning, like attacking these things, because Isaac Newton's law of inertia says that which has begun in motion is likely to stay in motion unless something else, an external force, acts upon it. Meaning, starting in motion, likely to remain in momentum or motion.
We love a quote on this show as well. In fact, there's lots of quotes on our websites that is our favorite ones. And talking websites and and where people have taken a lot of value from this. And I'm sure there'll be a hell of a lot of people that have listened all the way to this point. And thank you for doing that. But thank you, Dimitri, for coming on. Where is the best places that people can get in contact with you and deep dive more into the specifics around the area that kind of relates most for them, for their goals?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's appreciate that. So the best place at the moment, because I'm getting some work done on the website. So the best place at the moment is Coach Dimitri _ on Instagram. I will respond to any messages or questions on there within 24 hours. So Coach Dimitri _ on Instagram, or Dimitri Christou. That's like Christ OU on LinkedIn. And you can connect with me there as well. And when the website's sorted, I will have that back in my bio on Instagram. But for now, I'm just really into helping people and doing the things. So those would be the places to find me.
Been brilliant. Thank you very much for coming on. It's been an awesome one, James, hasn't it?
It really has. And as I promised, I wasn't going to let you go without the exercise. So come on.
Here we go.
Okay, cool.
What are we doing?
Yeah. There's actually a video on my Instagram of a client speaking about this, and how much it helped them as well. So if you want to relate to that, you can check that out. It's one of the top posts on there. So it is called Yoga Nidra, right? So Nidra means sleep. So it's basically yoga sleep. It's not actually a yoga exercise. But that's just what it's called. The science term for it is non-sleep deep rest, right? So you're not sleeping, but it's deep rest. It does what sleep does for you, right? There's various free ones on YouTube that range from 10 minutes. I recommend people start there to 15 to 20 to 30 minutes. And essentially, it's a closed eye exercise that takes it's scripted, so you'll follow the script of the said video, right? Which, as I said, there's free ones. And as by following that script and doing the awareness exercises through your body, that puts your nervous system and body into a place of deep rest as if you were sleeping. And therefore, as if you were sleeping, you will then get the benefits of the energy increase after. So if you are sleep deprived or you want a second wind, the 15 minutes you take for that will 2, 3, 4, 5x itself in energetic output after.
Wow.
So that's what it's called.
Awesome. Great
Powerful.
share. Big share. Thank you.
Powerful. Better than a Red Bull.
You got that right. So yeah,
Yoga
give it a
Nidra,
try.
give you wings.
It does.
Appreciate
you,
it.
guys.
Thank you for your advice. Thank you for your pearls of wisdom. And until the next Project Peak Performance episode, James, I'll see you soon.
Will do.